Today we're going to be changing out the spark plugs on a 2021 Dodge Durango with a 5.7 liter engine RT. First thing we're going to do is you're going to pull off this engine cover. Just pulls right up, lift it, set it out the way. To gain access to the spark plugs, you're going to have to remove your engine coils. So you're going to have 4 on each side. You're going to have 4 on the passenger side, 4 on the driver's side. Each cylinder on these 5.7 liter HEMIs are going to have 2 spark plugs per cylinder. So that's going to come out to a total of 16 plugs that you're going to need for this thing. First thing you're going to do is you're going to start by removing the connector for the engine coil. Now the best way to get this bad boy off is there's a little tab right here. You're going to push that tab in, connector comes right off. Go to the next one, push that tab in, connector comes right off. You don't have to worry about disconnecting the engine battery. As long as you don't start it or attempt to start it while these connectors are disconnected, you won't get any faults or any type of engine light for this. So just push the tab in, connector comes right out. You're gonna do that to both sides. Next thing you're gonna do, before you even start taking out the coils, you're gonna have to get yourself a vacuum cleaner. Like a shop vac, kind of like this one that I have here. I got it at Walmart, not very expensive. You can get them around 50 bucks. And you're gonna want to vacuum up all of this dust and dirt that is trapped up in here on top of your valve covers. You don't want to remove your coils and spark plugs and then dust end up falling inside of there, which can cause trouble later on. So yeah, the best thing to do is just clean it all up. Okay, so we're gonna get this vacuum cleaner going. Okay, once you vacuum out this area and you get all the dirt out and dust, your ignition coils are going to be held down by 2 10mm bolts. So you got one here and one on that side. You're just going to get yourself a 10mm socket with a ratchet and start removing these 10mm bolts. These are pretty easy. They're not really torqued on too tight. Once you break them loose, you can pretty much continue removing it by hand. Okay, once you remove your 2 10mm bolts, next thing you're going to do, you're going to grab the ignition coil and you're just going to pull straight out. You'll notice it has, for each coil, it has 2 ignition coil boots. Each of these boots go right over the top of the spark plugs. Like I said, 2 plugs per cylinder. As you can see right there, there is 2 bores where your spark plugs sit inside of. It's kind of hard to get a good visual on that, but I just wanted to show you what it's going to look like. But I like to place them in the order that I removed them. So what I'll do is I'll set them up in order. As I remove the ignition coils, I will place them in the order that I removed them. We're gonna remove the second one. I'm gonna lay this right next to this one, so that way they are in order. Same thing with the next. place it in order. They are in order. Next, you're gonna get yourself a long extension, which I can't find my long extension right now, so I'm just kind of doubling up on my extensions. Then you're gonna get yourself a 5/8 socket. I purchased this one at O'Reilly Auto Parts. It's a 5/8 deep socket, specifically designed to remove spark plugs. It's got a little rubber boot inside of there that actually kind of helps latch onto the back of the plug while you pull it out. Get your extension and your 5/8 socket. You may need to drop it down to a shorter extension because you might not be able to fit it in there. What you might actually have to do is get your extension, your short extension, pop the socket with the short extension in there first, then get your second extension, then attach it to your ratchet. And you're gonna pop it right on top of the spark plug and you're gonna go counterclockwise. You're just gonna, then you can go ahead and remove your ratchet. Just take it out by hand. Continue to spin. Then you can just pull straight out. See how I mentioned the 5/8 deep socket spark plug removal socket? Having that little rubber boot inside helps it latch onto the plug really well. You go ahead and just pop these bad boys out. Go ahead and remove the second one. Same thing like the other one. Just pull straight out. And you're just going to continue on to do the same thing to the other ones. As far as spark plugs, there's many different brands. Dodge requires iridium spark plugs. I'm going with the Champions. First thing you're going to do, even though some of these spark plugs manufacturers may say that their plugs come pre-gapped, but what I like to do is I always want to double check the gap on the spark plug themselves to make sure that it is gapped properly. You can get yourself one of these spark plug gap tools. The gap required for these plugs in this specific vehicle is 0.044. So what you're going to do is you're going to get the spark plug itself. You're going to move it down to 0.44. These plugs are gapped way too far. So what you can do is just kind of push down on it and recheck the gap. So it's going to be as you can see, there are numbers on the spark plug gap tool. For instance, required gap for this plug for this vehicle is 0.044. So if you see it says 0.040, there's dash marks. You're going to go 4 dash marks past that 0.040, which would come out to 0.044. Once you gapped all your spark plugs with the spark plug gapper tool, next thing you're going to do before you put these plugs in, you're going to get yourself some dielectric connector protector, also known as dielectric silicone. And you're going to place a little bit of this on the spark plug itself. You don't have to put too much, just a little bit. You could also stuff some inside the spark plug boot. Then you're going to just drop the spark plug in. The next spark plug that you gapped, you're going to put some dielectric silicone on there. Drop it in there. Same thing with the rest of them. And you're gonna do that with all of them. By applying that dielectric connector protector, what it's gonna do is it's gonna help keeping your spark plug coils, ignition coils from getting corrosion. We're gonna just tighten up your spark plugs. Now, I will be placing the torque specifications for these spark plugs on the link below, but if you don't have a torque wrench, you're just gonna keep tightening it until you get that first sign of resistance, and then you're just gonna give it a quick little 2 turns. You don't want to over torque these because you could break the spark plug off, and then you'll be dealing with a bigger headache. Like I said, be careful, you don't want to over tighten these. Once all your spark plugs are tight and they're all put in, just make sure you check all of them. You don't want to accidentally forget and leave a couple loose. You'll cause a engine misfire. Next, once you installed all your spark plugs and you double checked your work to make sure everything's tight, you're gonna get your ignition coils. And the same way you remove them is the same way you're gonna put them on. Just shove it down so that way it's flushed, lined up where the 10mm bolts go. Just go ahead and get all of them. Give it a push. Since you got the ignition coils removed, it's a good chance to good time to just take a look. Make sure all the springs are in there. It's kind of hard to see, but there's springs inside of there. Make sure the boot's not torn or damaged. Pop it up top. Next, you're gonna get your 10mm bolts, and you are going to install the screws. You're not gonna fully tighten them yet. So you got one bolt, you got the second right there. Okay, so once you put in your 10mm screws, 10mm bolts on all of your ignition coils, where you get your 10mm socket with your extension, and just tighten these on. Like I said, it's plastic, you don't want to break it. Sometimes you might have to take this extension off so that way you have more space. You're not going too tight on this. You don't want to break these bolts off, then you cause yourself a misfire. Literally, once you get a little bit of resistance, just give it a couple turns. Once it's tight, just give it a little turn. You're gonna just double check, make sure they're all tight. Once they're all tight, get your connectors. Like I said, inspect them, make sure they're not damaged. And you're gonna just push it onto the ignition coil until you hear that little click. Push it on until you hear that click. Give it a little wiggle. Make sure it's on all the way. A little wiggle. Make sure it's on. Then you're going to plug in the one in the back till you hear the click. Give it a little wiggle. Connectors are in all the way. Just double check your work. Make sure all the bolts are connected and your connectors are all plugged in. Next, you're going to move over to the driver's side. We already got these connectors removed, and you're just going to follow the same steps that you performed on the passenger side. Now you'll notice once you break the spark plugs loose and you fully unscrew them, sometimes you run into issues where you can't get the spark plug out. Now there's a special tool that they sell at Harbor Freight or at the auto parts store, which is like pretty much like a boot that you pop over the spark plug and you're able to retrieve it like that. But what I like to do is I always carry a old ignition coil boot. I mean, if you have to, you can just take off one of your boots from your ignition coil. Just make sure that this little piece doesn't fall out, because it will come out when you pull the boot off. And you're going to just slide it down into the cylinder. And there you go. Just toss it. Same thing on the next side. Just push the boot into the cylinder. Out comes spark plug. Just continue to do that till you get the rest of the plugs out. So this is the driver's side. The only difference between taking the spark plugs and ignition coils off on this side versus the passenger side is just you got a couple more, like, you know, vacuum lines and hoses that may be in your way. So you may just kind of have to work around it. But also, once you remove all the spark plugs, this is also a great time to go ahead and look inside of your cylinders to make sure there's no oil puddles in there. If you see any oil in there, there's a good chance that your valve cover gasket's going bad. So you may need to replace that if you notice that there's oil inside of there. Okay, so next thing you're gonna do is the same thing you did on that side, which is to gap your spark plugs and put some of the dielectric silicone. So I got a little bit right here. Just gonna place it right at the tip. And you're gonna do this to all of them. Okay, once you tighten in all the spark plugs, next thing you're gonna do, same thing you did on that side, you're gonna get your ignition coils. Hold it. And you're gonna guide the boots in. And just give it a push. So that way the ignition coil boot is seated on top of the spark plug. Next thing you're gonna do, same thing. Guide the ignition coil boots in, give it a push. Give it a push. Get your last one. You're gonna have to squeeze through these hoses that are up here. Guide your coil in, give it a push. Get your two 10mm bolts. And just screw them into the coil. What I like to do is I like to put them in by hand first. Once I screw them in by hand, then I'll get the 10mm ratchet and tighten them in. you're just gonna do that to the other 3 coils. Next, get your 10mm socket with your ratchet. Same thing. You're not gonna want to put these bolts on too tight. You're just gonna keep tightening until you feel that resistance. Once you feel that resistance, give it 2 little turns. Just keep doing that all the way down. Once you feel it getting tight, give it 2 turns. Gets tight, 2 turns. 1, 2. Once you got all your 10mm bolts on, same thing here. Get your harness, push it on till you hear that click. Just follow it all the way down. Push it on till you hear the click. Click, give it a little wiggle. Make sure it doesn't slide off. Click, give it a wiggle. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just double check your work. Make sure nothing's loose, nothing's missing. Your connectors are on. Each of your coils has 2 bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Same thing on this side. Make sure your 2 10mm bolts are holding on each ignition coil. 1, 2, 3, 4. Make sure your connectors are on correctly and they're not loose or wiggling off. Then you'll start the vehicle and just listen to how she sounds. If you notice any excessive vibration or any type of abnormal noises, engine light, then you might have done something wrong. So in my case, I'm gonna have to fix this vacuum line. As you guys can see, it started to crack. That right there will cause a vacuum leak. So what I'm gonna do to fix this, since I still got plenty of slack, I'm gonna cut it right across here, right where that split ends. And I'm gonna just shove the hose back on, and that should get rid of that problem. Once you start the vehicle up, you're gonna observe the engine. If you see any excessive vibration going on, where the motor is just vibrating, or it just sounds funny, sounds like it's running rough, there's a good chance that there's an engine misfire, which means you probably didn't gap one of the spark plugs correctly, or you didn't put something on right. So in this case, I'm not seeing any excessive vibration going on. I'm gonna go inside. I'm gonna give it some gas. If you had a misfire, you would hear it. Sounds good. Just raise the RPMs on it. Just keep it still. Right at 3,000. You may even have to test drive the vehicle just to make sure you don't get an engine light. And if you do, just connect your scan tool and look for any engine misfire codes. In this case, the engine sounds good. I just released the accelerator. Still no abnormal noises. Yeah, you would see the engine shaking if you had a misfire. In this case, we did everything correctly. Now you guys know how to replace spark plugs on a Dodge Durango RT with the 5.7 liter engine. This same process for any other 5.7 liter engine. There may be a few differences, but for the most part, it should be all the same. Thank you for watching.